Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend and partner. You know who I'm talking about. He's known to some as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, the one and only Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, good.
It's nice to see you.
It's nice to see you.
Been a little while.
Yeah, it has. Have you done anything exciting lately?
Just work and work.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. Actually, seen a printmaker make some prints the other day at a little show here in Rapid City. She had this little desktop one, and it was really kind of cool just to watch the process. So it was fun.
I know. We should have had Sue Omi when we were up there in Steamboat, give us a demo.
Right.
I mean, we talked about it in depth, but we didn't really get to see the actual process. So that's cool that you got to see that.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. Yeah. My culture for the week. Love it.
You know what? And it's been about a week since I've been out and about looking at art. So I didn't get out last night to see any openings, but hopefully this next week.
Good. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. You can keep up with the goings on of Tenant on our Instagram at Tenant Podcast and follow us on Facebook on our Tenant Podcast page, where we post links to our newest episodes and goings on each and every week. And of course, you can tap into our archives and get info on our website at tenantpodcast.com. All right, on to the art. Our guest this week is the director of the Dikeou Collection here in Denver, Colorado. And if you don't know about the Dikeou Collection, you can check out their website at dikeoucollection.org. And Dikeou is spelled Dikeou. That's dikeoucollection.org. And we want to welcome to the program Hayley Richardson. Hayley, how are you?
Hi, Todd. I'm great. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us today and spending some time with us talking about what you do and your journey with art. You can follow Hayley on Instagram at Little Halien, and that's LittleHalien. Hayley, how long have you been director at the Dikeou Collection?
It's been about 6 years.
And what were you doing previous to that?
Previous to that, I was working at the Dikeou Collection. I've been there going on 11 years now, actually. I started off as an intern in about 2011, 2012. And then about a year or so into my internship, the opportunity came up for a new position as the special projects coordinator. And I held that role for about 5 years. And then when the former director at the time, was taking his next step, I assumed the director position at that time.
Wow.
Hey, I got a question.
Yeah.
Go for it.
What does the special projects coordinator do? What does that entail? Because I have a side note. Once you tell me your story, what's that all entail?
So it was a position that didn't really exist at the collection prior. It's always been a really small staff there. And so honestly, everybody who has worked at some capacity at the Dikeou Collection has done pretty much a little bit of everything. But I did a lot with coordinating our events, promoting them, organizing and facilitating them, and working a lot with Devon Dikeou, who's the curator and the co-founder of the collection. She's also a very active artist. And so doing studio management projects with her and facilitating fabrication of new artwork or kind of reviving older pieces and community outreach, those types of things.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, when I was in the nonprofit, my last title was Director of Special Projects. And I kind of always told people, because it's kind of a strange title, right? Special Projects. And I told it was everything from running programs to changing toilet paper rolls.
It's everything.
And everybody laughed. But I always was perplexed by the title Special Projects Director. So
it's kind of a catch-all title.
All encompassing, right?
Will you clean the bathroom?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And you just do it. But in the nonprofit world, in the art sector, a lot of institutions are pretty small. So everybody does a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
You seem like you've had a really pretty storied career thus far. Where does this journey with art start for you?
I mean, the journey with art is, I mean, since I was a kid, I grew up in like a really creative household surrounded by like my parents' friends who are all like artists or working in some sort of creative field. I'm originally from San Francisco, so it's just like a hub for people like that everywhere. And I mean, I can't really think of anything else. Like even when you're a little kid, when you ask someone like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's always just like an artist. And that was my answer for everything. But when I got into like high school, I'd say was when I was introduced more to like the behind the curtain art scene of, you know, museums and institutions and galleries and how they operate. And I became just more engrossed with that world than, you know, wanting to be like a professional artist per se. I did go to college with the intention of getting a studio degree. And within just like, I don't know, maybe a year or two into it was when like I was dabbling into art history a bit more and just found that I was a bit more successful in that area, and that, you know, art making is really hard, and, you know, it's a job. If you're going that direction, it's real work. And I think that's something I wanted to save kind of more as a personal thing for me.
I think a lot of people don't realize it, that, you know, being an artist is a job. We've talked about it numerous times on the podcast. But if you want to be successful, you got to treat it as such. You got to be consistently working in all the different facets of what an art career entails. So you had a fascination with the history of our art history and thought about, you know, maybe I want to work in galleries or at a museum.
Yeah. I think even before though, like I was really kind of like quote unquote studying art history in college. I had opportunities that came about at a really young age. I was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico when I was in high school. And my neighbor at the time, I was only like 14. My neighbor somehow assumed this job of a directorship of a gallery that was downtown. And she was like, oh, Hayley, why don't you like come work in my gallery with me and be my assistant? And I was like, okay, that sounds fun. And so I got like my worker's permit and everything. And so right from the get-go, like my very first job was working in an art gallery, like in one of the like biggest art cities in the country. And the gallery itself had a real contemporary focus, you know, living artists that I got to meet, like when they would come and have their openings. And it was like really cool to me to like be in that world. But like the day-to-day stuff, like greeting people when they come in, answering the emails and the phones and taking care of the inventory and that type of stuff. And I was just really into it. I was also introduced to a curatorial program for teens offered through Site Santa Fe. And that program really, I think, launched the whole trajectory for me, like for sure. It was run by a guy named Chris Nail, who really took an interest in young people like my age in high school and giving us that really real world experience of like, this is how you meet artists. This is studio visits. This is how you curate a show, do a call for entries, write a press release, do marketing, you know, install the work. And we were like doing really, you know, high-end productions, you know, exhibitions. I would say we did shows at the Museum of Fine Arts. We also did shows at like really experimental art spaces in Albuquerque, like AC Squared. We did a show at the Santa Fe Capitol building in the Rotunda lobby, which is really awesome. That was an exhibition of kids in juvenile incarceration. So that was like pretty amazing to kind of like work on like that level with people and artists. So yeah, the combination of like working the gallery with my neighbor and doing the Site Santa Fe curatorial program was really like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And so I went into college. It was art history, museum studies. And yeah, that's like the foundation for everything.
Wow, what an incredible experience. And obviously having those doors open at such a young age and being able to experience that firsthand with people that were able to mentor you. I mean, not many people get to say that they've had that kind of experience, I would imagine.
No, not at all. Like I have to say that my experience is really unique in that way. there's very like the Site Santa Fe program, for example, like at that time, this is like 1999, 2000. There's, I think, one other program that like we were aware of at that time that was similar at the Walker Art Center. But otherwise, like teens are sort of like kind of a forgotten or like lost demographic, I think, especially again for like back then. Now it's like everybody wants teen programs, which I think is amazing. But yeah, it's absolutely comes from like older people, recognizing what your interests are, facilitating it, rooting for you. That was quintessential, like important to my success. Like to this day, I always like give thanks for those people who were there for me at that time.
You mentioned at the time that there weren't really many experiences open to teens back in the 90s. Has that changed now in 2021? Are there a lot more programs available to teens?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say now like teen programs, museum education in general is number one, I'd say priority for most big institutions these days. The MCA here in Denver has a tremendous teen program that they would do. I don't know a whole lot about it to speak about it, but I think it's something similar where it's kind of like giving them the tools to create, their own events, their own programs, their own sort of like, thing to be proud of. And just even like the regular sort of public programs, I think are geared towards a much younger audience with, the music that they like to do and concerts and like the workshops and stuff like that. So I think that's amazing. And I'm really happy to see those things happening.
That's really cool. So you went to University of New Mexico?
Yes.
And got your Bachelor's of Fine Arts?
Art history.
Art history.
BA. Yeah.
Oh, it's a B. Okay.
At that school it is. I don't know. It's always like, I think kind of all over the place, but yeah, I have a BA.
How was that experience? They obviously you were doing internships and such, but how was the actual education part of it at University of New Mexico?
The education is world class. I have to say that. When I was applying to colleges, I of course wanted to like go to some, quote unquote, like fancy art school. But I was, convinced to go to University of New Mexico mainly because they offer a really great scholarship program for people who are applying from in-state. So I was just like, all right, save the money. And, art itself is such like a big thing in New Mexico in general. It's really known for its arts and culture. And it's a world-class program, I would say, honestly. And they offer, PhDs too. The professors were all very, smart, of course, very engaging, very helpful. But if I were to have like some criticism, there was, I think, a lot of gaps when I was getting ready to apply for graduate school and just being like, how do I do this? It's a really overwhelming process, especially if you're kind of just starting from square one and you're like, am I studying art history or museum studies, or should I like do something else to kind of like segue, into this field? And once I started kind of asking those bigger questions that went outside of just UNM's parameters, they were like, oh, well, not really sure what you should be doing. And so that was like some frustration, but, thankfully just kind of pull it together. I just thought of like areas that I wanted to live in and, looked at schools that way and would try to find ones also that had focuses both art history and museum studies. And actually finding that combo is really difficult. There's very few universities that let you do both. University of Denver is one of them, and that's where I attended. And then I think George Washington University was another one where you could combine those two fields of studies. Otherwise, they were pretty separate. And a lot of museum studies programs are geared towards kind of more anthropological, I'd say, collections or practices. And so doing the art and museums, that's like a kind of tricky combo, but University of Denver rocks that like no other. So I feel really fortunate that I, got accepted into that program and met some great people, had a great education. And that's what introduced me to, my career now that I've had.
So what's a master's program in art history at DU look like?
It's intense. It's really intense. DU is on the quarter system. It's not semester. So you are, picking new classes and everything on a 10-week schedule. So basically, like every week and a half, it's like, okay, I have a 20-page paper due. I have a midterm. I have a final. I have a 20-page paper. I have a midterm, a final for 5 different classes. It's a very, very small program. I will say that there's like maybe 6 full-time professors. Others are, like adjuncts, and they change up quite a bit. But really phenomenal teaching there and mentorship. And again, with the combination for museum studies, a lot of the professors or people who are, teaching a class for a particular quarter are usually working in the museum field at that moment. So you'd get, like, one of my professors for my Spanish Baroque art history was the Carnegie Mellon Fellow at the Denver Art Museum, doing special projects and curatorial for them in the Spanish Colonial Department. The head of the museum studies aspect of the program, Gwen Chanzit, she was the former curator of modern and contemporary art at Denver Art Museum. So you are like immediately plugged in with the people that you want to work for, tomorrow. So that's like the biggest benefit.
Do they have a PhD program as well?
They do not.
Okay.
I believe UC Boulder has an art history PhD program, though.
Okay. Yeah. So do you have a plan to get your PhD, or?
Can't answer that. I don't know. I've thought about it for sure. And honestly, if I were to kind of go that route, I would probably go back to UNM, and go back to Albuquerque for that. But I think it would depend totally on just what I would focus on for my PhD. And even my focus for my master's was, I ended up doing my thesis, my master's research paper on a more modern and contemporary artist. But I was this close, really close to going a pre-Columbian route and writing about Mesoamerican art. And so that would have, total trajectory difference.
Right. Yeah.
So part of these programs, or at least with your master's, is there a requirement to, do internships and get that practical hands-on experience?
Yes, the internship is crucial to your requirements and for graduation. And I did my internship at a gallery that was at the time in the Santa Fe Art District, the Sandra Phillips Gallery. Yeah, I was there for 5 months, and I actually did, I think I got a job there right afterwards too, but then right after my internship, but then I found the Dikeou Collection right after, and I was kind of this is a bit more what I'm going for. But yeah, everyone has to do internships. We had to do a daily journal for every single day that you went in and write about what you did, even if it was just I sharpened pencils today and, talk to a few people. There's some days where it's kind of quiet, and some days it's wow, big hands-on moment. And then another paper that you have to write after that, kind of summarizing your whole experience and how you plan to use the skills that you gained in the future, what worked, what didn't work, what's changed your thoughts on things. So, yeah.
Have you talked to a lot of other people that did internships in your master's program, and what their experience was like in different galleries?
I don't want to say the same experiences. I don't think we really talked a whole lot, because the internship was honestly sort of the easy side. I don't want to say it was easy, but for grad school, it's kind of all right, I'm going to go do this for a couple hours, write my journal, and, you can kind of move on. But compared to your other classes where it's you want to tear your hair out, that's more what we're talking about, when we're all hanging out at lunch together or something. It's just oh my God, could you believe that surrealism project we had? I don't know how I'm going to do this. That's more what we're talking about.
Yeah. So my point about internships, it's got to be valuable for the student. And so I think a lot of people, when they think of internships, it's cheap labor, and they do menial tasks, but they don't really learn a whole lot. So it's so important if you're going to offer, I think if you're an artist or a gallery that's going to offer an internship, that you got to make it worthwhile for the intern as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And we have an internship program at the Dikeou Collection. And, I always try to really make it as fulfilling as possible for everybody who, chooses to spend that time with us. But you do have to, learn that there are sort of the less glamorous aspects of just like any other job that you have to do. But then there's like the really like glorious moments too that make it all worth it. And in the end, you know, a lot of interns that I've had, you know, ask me to write letters of recommendation for them when they're, you know, applying to grad school or other jobs. And, you know, that just shows that like the whole thing came full circle and was meaningful. And it's like they have something to really show for it.
Yeah.
So pretty competitive to get into University of Denver.
I would say probably. It's a really small program. There was, I think, less than 10 of us in like my like year of acceptance and going in, and like the year prior to us, it's a 2-year program. There was, again, I think maybe like 8, 9, 10 people. I don't know if that's really based on competitiveness or just, you know, there's
Interest.
Just level of interest. I really can't say, but I think most art history programs, you know, when you get to that kind of like upper level, like master's or PhD levels, like they're pretty small. It's a tight knit thing. Yeah.
Are you still in contact with a lot of those people that were in your class?
I am. Yeah. Quite a few of them are still in Denver. A number of people who work at Denver Art Museum, especially. Again, that's kind of like the main link that school had with a particular institution was the dam. So I have a number of friends who are having, you know, really good success there. And some people who go in different directions, but, you know, are able to use those skills in different ways. You know, art history is heavily research focused. You need really good research skills. You need really good writing skills. That's like really the core of what you're producing. And so I think that was, you know, that type of knowledge in general can be really useful in other areas.
You spoke to some of your experiences when you're working on your bachelor's and how phenomenal those were. What were some of anything that sticks out in your mind as you were working towards your master's in that program, as far as your internships or things that were special that you got to experience?
Yeah, definitely. So the kind of like overarching umbrella museum studies class that you can take every single like time that we met, we're meeting with a new person who works in the arts every single day and like going to their office. So it's like you're sitting down with the director of MCA, you're sitting down with the press writers at Westward, you're sitting down with people who run like the Littleton Family Farm History Museum. So you're meeting like these really interesting people every single day. But I mean, if I really were to like say one crucial moment, it was the curatorial practicum course that I took, which the students are set up to work with a private collector, typically in the contemporary art field, and curate an exhibition from their collection for exhibition at the gallery on campus. And the year that I took it, I don't know what really happened, but it didn't have a contemporary focus, which is totally fine. We did a great show of French and American Impressionist landscapes. So, I mean, we had like Corot's and Courbet's and monumental works. So there's nothing to sneeze at there. But then when it was offered the second time around, even though I had already taken it, the person who was like overseeing that program invited me back to kind of like be the an assistant in a way, a facilitator of the class. And that's when we were working with the Dikeou Collection and Devon Dikeou. And so that's how we were introduced. And that was like so amazing because we got to go to New York and do a trip there and do like studio visits with major New York artists, get real behind the scenes looks at the MoMA, just like this entryway behind the curtain that like, even for me who did have quite a good background beforehand, that was even more so than I had ever experienced. And Devon and I really hit it off. And, you know, after like a few months or so, I saw that Dikeou Collection was looking for interns and I was just like, bing, sign me up, you know, I'm there. So that was the big moment too. There was also an exhibition that was Warhol in Colorado, again, out on campus at the Vicki Mirren Gallery at DU, where I was invited to do essay contributions for their catalog. And I felt like that was a really great opportunity where I felt sort of just like noticed for something and picked, to be like, hey, I think that you'd be really good at this. And so that was like one of my bigger like exhibition publications that I was really proud of.
And you've done a fair amount of writing. Yeah,
I have. I did have an internship in Albuquerque with the Albuquerque Alibi, which is the kind of like Westward here, like the weekly arts and culture publication. And I got to write a cover story about like the Albuquerque, New Mexico alternative art scene. I've had essays published in Denver Art Museum's catalogs, just one actually, for an exhibition called Blink, Light, Sound, and the Moving Image. And it was all like new media work. And the Warhol in Colorado publication. And I also write regularly for the Dikeou Collection blog and do interviews for the Zing Magazine side of the Dikeou spectrum, artist interviews there.
Nice. Talk about that experience of traveling to New York and doing all these studio visits. Who all did you get to go visit with, and talk a little bit more about how eye-opening that was?
Sure. So again, we were working with Devon and her collection at that time. She's a New York-based artist and has a studio there. That's also the hub of her art publication, Zing Magazine. So she invited, the class to do this trip and a studio visit with her. So that was my first time seeing her work. And we got to visit Brad Kahlhammer's studio, which was amazing. He is a Native American artist who's based in Brooklyn. And his studio was like, I don't know, I can't describe it, but it was just full of so many objects and like his personal collections that like really inspire him beyond just like his personal artwork. We got to go to Lucky de Bellevue's studio. He's a Dikeou Collection artist. Nils Folk Anderson, another Dikeou Collection artist. His studio was really cool. It was located by, I think, the Domino Sugar Factory. So when you get there, like everything just smells like donuts and candy and sugar everywhere. And so we're just like all excited. And his studio was like, it's huge. It was a big warehouse. He's a sculptor. And just walking into like something like so massive like that, that's what felt like really New York to me, and like going in like the freight elevator and everything. And then we were invited to go to dinner with Brad and with Lucky and with Devon at this really cool pizza place called Martha's Pizza, which I don't think is even open anymore, which is too bad. But just like sit down and have like this artist dinner and like, again, see that side of it. It reminded me of my early days, back in Santa Fe, where it's like we're having a dinner after the opening, and like you really get these intimate experiences with these artists that you don't always get. And that was like really special to me.
That's phenomenal. Before you arrived at the Dikeou Collection, is that where you kind of saw yourself kind of going, or were you thinking that you were going to end up in, like the Denver Art Museum or some other museum somewhere in the US?
Yeah, I definitely anticipated more of like a more like formal or traditional institution like Denver Art Museum. That's kind of really what like I knew at that time. When I was graduating college, a family member spoke to me and he said, like, you really need to work for a private collector. Aside from like the art thing, like my art interest, collecting is a big interest for me in general. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, where in the world am I going to like find a private collector to work for? Like, that's just, I felt like it was so out of left field. But something I always kept in mind. And then like the opportunity literally just kind of opened itself in front of me and I grabbed it.
Almost like serendipity sometimes, I bet.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I can't think, I don't know a lot of private collectors. I had the honor of meeting Devon a couple months back. It was a phenomenal experience, and I really appreciate her as an artist. But I can't think of a better position to be in, because my little bit of interaction with her, she's so kind and down to earth, and she was very generous as far as like taking time. And she was doing this with everybody. It wasn't just me. She's a wealth of information. Oh my God. I was like, she was just throwing stuff at me right and left. But I imagine pretty amazing experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, she and I like really just, I feel, hit it off on a personal level. spending that time in New York together. And, after the program ended and everything, there was still like some time where I was still at Sandra Phillips Gallery, I believe. And yeah, when I saw that opportunity for an internship and went for it. And it was actually during a really crucial time in the collection too, where there was a lot of growth. There was new acquisitions coming in. Artists were coming in to install their work, doing talks, having the openings. And I think now that I remember, like right off the bat of my internship, there was something like, who was it? Nils Folk Anderson needs a ride home from the airport. Who's going to go pick him up? And I was like, I guess I'll do it. Like, I'll go get him. And so that was just like one of my first jobs, was driving out to DIA and picking up an artist who, I had met previously. So there was already like that connection established. And his work, like I mentioned, he's a sculptor. And the piece that we had acquired came from his styrofoam series of work, where he's making these 9-foot by 9-foot styrofoam squares that are all linked together. And he actually loved Colorado because it apparently had like great styrofoam facilities or places to get it. He's like, you have so much styrofoam here, you have no idea. So he was loving it. And yeah, helping him like build that sculpture from scratch and like flinging it around the room and like standing up on the radiators and trying to get it to like balance between the ceiling and like the corner of the floor. And I was just like, wow, this is like the best internship I've ever had. Just that, again, that really hands-on experience, and another kind of serendipitous moment too, like I mentioned, where there was new work coming in, there was work like new art acquisitions, work to be done, artists coming into town. So it was just full speed ahead from there.
Sounds just incredibly exciting, especially, at the beginning of your career, and you're interacting with these world-class artists that, most people only ever read about or see, photographs of their work and publications, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's like the beauty of working, in the contemporary art field in particular, is like these artists are here with you now. You're working with them. It's not like art history where I'm just like reading thousands of books and everything and just like painting the pictures in my mind. It's like right there before you. It's pretty incredible.
So I got to ask you, since you've had these incredible experiences, do you keep a record of them? Do you journal about them?
I don't do that. I've tried journaling a bit in the past, and I just don't stick with it very well. I do keep like a very thorough day planner of just, the list of things I have to do. And I keep all of those. And even though it's just like straggly lists all over the place, like to me, that's like a pretty accurate capture of my life and what I'm doing at that moment or during like a whole chunk of time, whichever way you look at it.
So you do have a record that can...
There's a record, but I do like to, again, like flip through my day planner from, a few years ago, and there'll just be like something in it. I'm just like, what does this even mean? It'll just be some random words. I'm like, this was probably really important because I wrote it like 4 times over the course of 5 days. And so sometimes like not remembering all of it is still like fun to me too. Yeah.
I like it when I write down notes and then I go back to look at the note and I have no clue what the heck I even meant.
Yeah. It's a lot of that.
I do that a lot. Yeah.
You're now the director, and obviously that was built from your experience and showing that, you were capable of doing the job. You're the second director of the Dikeou Collection?
No, there's been 2, 3, 4 before me.
Okay.
Yeah, the collection opened to the public, I think in 2003. And before, like, and around that time, it wasn't even like very fully open to the public. It was like, especially like the MCA back then, when it was at the Sakura Square fish market venue, practically, they would have their events at the Dikeou Collection. So it's like we would be open for like special events like that, or if there was an opening for new work. But I don't think that there was like a regular Wednesday through Friday, 11 to 5, like business hours. I think that came a couple years later when it became like, okay, Dikeou Collection's a thing now. It's its own entity. We got to open this up and exist in this format.
So I want to get some background on the Dikeou Collection. You mentioned that it opened to the public in 2003, but for those that don't know or are unfamiliar, tell us what the Dikeou Collection is.
Sure. So the Dikeou Collection is a private collection of contemporary art that was founded by Devon and Pawnee Dikeou. They are brother and sisters, both from Denver. And, as I mentioned previously, Devon is an artist, and she's also the founder, editor, and publisher of Zing Magazine, which is based in New York, and that started in 1995. And as an artist, starting from her career in like the late 80s, early 90s, Devon's very integrated with this art scene, of New York at that time, and, friends with people, and everyone knows each other. They're showing work together. And, just eventually you make friendships with these people, and artists, like to share their work with one another, and, let's trade pieces, or here's a little thing for you. And so eventually she started kind of like amassing this little collection of just stuff like that. And her brother actually, I believe, is the one who sort of noticed, like, you got something going on here with this work that you're acquiring in addition to your own. Maybe we should get into collecting, like, seriously, these artists, and not just, the napkin drawings and all that, even though those are awesome. She's like, yeah, okay, yeah, let's think about that. And then she started Zing Magazine, again, with a lot of these artists who are all kind of in the same circle, participating, where, she's either inviting them to submit projects of their work for publication, or they're submitting it, pitching it to her. And so generally it was works that she's publishing that they begin to like acquire for their collection. It just sort of grew from there. That's like the conceptual underpinnings of the collection itself, is like these circles of people that Devon runs with and knows and is friendly with, and the magazine coming into it all together. When they really started to like seriously collect work, the family has that Colorado building. They're in real estate, so they own that building where the collection is, and they were just kind of storing it there as it was being remodeled. And so then the 5th floor became available, and they were like, oh, let's like start putting some work up that we have and just see what it looks like and get it out of the crates. And then from there, like, that's when, other people started to come see it. But it's a non-rotating collection. People ask how often we change the exhibitions. I mean, the answer is we really don't. We'll just keep adding to it. Like on that 5th floor, it's an office building. There's other tenants there. As space became available, we would just acquire it and, refurbish the room to be an exhibition space. And so we would just keep growing. And then, places like the pop-up, like you mentioned, just with the acquisition of work comes the acquisition of more space. And then we can all keep everything together. There's so many things to talk about as far as like the conceptual model of how the collection grows and what direction it goes in. I mentioned like the Zing Magazine connection, and, again, how artists who are published in it generally get their work acquired. But there's also this point of getting artists who are very early in their careers, also collecting work that is very difficult or can kind of like scare away other collectors just because of the materiality of it. I was describing that giant styrofoam sculpture. It's like, where is anybody really going to put that? It's great work, but for certain collectors, it's just like, that's just can't work for me in, practical ways. So yeah, work that's like really big, really fragile, that needs, sort of like a lot of tending to. That's the type of stuff that the collectors are going for as well.
How did she pick Denver, since she's a New York-based artist? Why did she pick Denver to have the collection at?
I think it's a space issue, really. Like I mentioned, they're in real estate, so there's space available. That's what makes the most sense for it.
Okay. And then how is the collection funded? Is it just the family money, or is it do you seek funding from, nonprofits or organizations?
No, so we're like not for profit. We don't charge admission or anything like that. It's privately funded. It's a private collection.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Before we talk a little bit more about the collection, tell our listeners where exactly you're located. You mentioned the building and it's on the 5th floor, but tell where the physical location is at.
Yes, so the collection is inside of the Colorado building, which is 1615 California Street on the 16th Street Mall, like in the heart of downtown, cross streets 16th in California. And our pop-up location is in the former Jerry's Record Exchange. If any old school Denver heads are familiar with that, the address is 312 East Colfax, and it's part of the Newhouse Hotel building, which also is home to Capitol Hill Books and Satellite Bar, just a block away from the Capitol building.
Are you open 5 days a week, 7 days a week? How does that work?
The collection is currently open by appointment Wednesday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And the pop-up space, that's like strictly by appointment at this point.
How do you make an appointment to see the collection?
Sure. So on our website, www.dikeoucollection.org, there's quite a few links available where, click here to make a reservation, and it's pretty easy to do it that way. You can also email info@dikeoucollection.org, and our phone number is 303-623-3001. We'll get you hooked up.
What's the best way of all those to make an appointment?
I'd say through our website is the best way, but it's all good either way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for those that haven't experienced it yet, you really need to do yourself a favor and go check it out. I have not seen the actual collection. There's something special that's going on right now at the Dikeou Collection, and talk about that if you would, Hayley.
Yes. So I did mention, just a minute ago that the collection is typically permanent exhibition, and, we don't rotate, we just expand. But we did make quite the exception for Devon Dikeou's mid-career retrospective, which is called Mid-Career Smear. Is curated by Courtney Lane Stell from Black Cube Nomadic Museum. And that's what we're currently exhibiting. And the exhibition will be on view until March 20th, 2023. So this is a big deal. It was a complete overhaul of the space. We closed for an entire year in 2019 to deinstall, to refurbish everything, and to install the Devon Dikeou work. So it was a big endeavor, and we had the opening in February 2020, like right on the cusp of COVID. And it was a total blowout. The opening was amazing, incredible turnout. And I'd say it was kind of like the last big party of that year, because then we had to close pretty much like 2 weeks later. But we're back on view, back on action, and we want you to come see the show.
Are masks required currently to come see the collection?
Masks are, I would say, required for those who are not vaccinated. I want everybody to be comfortable and be safe when they come visit. Fortunately, we're never like so busy that we have like a flood of people where you're going to feel crowded or like your space is maybe infringed upon in some way. So when people visit, it's nice because you almost have the whole place to yourself. So do that with what you will. The mask conversation, is changing every single day. I find that I've been wearing mine more often again. I think we all should do our part to stay safe and, keep everyone healthy.
Thank you. I'm glad you spoke to that, and hence the scheduling, right?
Yes, just to like stagger people's entrances and make sure that, you can, if someone comes in at 1:00 and then a 1:15 appointment comes in, there's enough like space there where, you're probably not going to bump into each other.
And so this runs through 2023. And I have seen this exhibition and I was blown away by it. I was only there for 2.5, maybe 3 hours.
That's all.
If you go, I highly suggest you need to allot yourself at least that amount of time, because parking downtown, you'll have to feed the meter if you're not in a parking garage or someplace long-term parking. But you want to allot yourself plenty of time to really kind of soak in the experience. I need to go back there. I've told multiple friends about it that have not had the opportunity to experience themselves. And all I can say is that from my personal experience, it's like falling down the rabbit hole or discovering that there's a whole nother world in the back of the closet of Narnia. It literally confused me the first time I walked in, because I was like, am I at the right place? Am I doing this right? I mean, there is no wrong way. I think it kind of like it has that ability to kind of have almost like it's almost transcendental is the way I would explain it when you walk through the actual exhibit itself.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. And that's exactly like you just described my experience walking there the first time. I mean, first of all, I couldn't find it. I'm calling my friends like, where is this place? Get in the building, get off the elevator. And even just like, I remember like that moment stepping off the elevator and looking, I was just like, where am I? Like, I feel like I'm in a different world right now. But it's also like a very familiar type place, I would say too. A lot of people come and they're just like, I feel like I'm at my old school, or I feel like, it gets compared a lot to MoMA PS1 in New York, which I actually have not been to, but I know what it's like. People compare to that a lot. So the building itself got a really cool history. It is a historic building. It was originally constructed in the late 1890s. And the 5th floor, where we're located, was initially the top floor of that building. And then just over the course, like several decades, several different architects have like come in and revamped it. They added 2 more levels. That Art Deco facade that's, over the 2 kind of like corners of the building on the exterior, that's a later addition. It's just like red brick underneath that. We went through another renovation just this past year too, with getting all of the windows in the building restored, and got like this really cool, like black accent, like almost like stripy look over the building. So it looks really, really beautiful right now. But yeah, you get off those elevators and it's an old school, like looking office essentially. And it's just all these little rooms, that we converted into exhibition spaces, and they all kind of like wind and maze together. So you're like twisting and turning every which way from one room to the next. And it's always something different. And yeah, it takes you to another world, and you leave, I think, feeling like, what was that? Like, that was so different and amazing. And I want to go back and figure it out again. And so, yeah, the nature of the venue itself, the space, like, I think has such a control over the experience of the artwork itself. And that's a big part of Devon's practice too, is the context of like where we're seeing art, where we're experiencing it. Are you at like the super slick white cube Gagosian gallery, or are you like in the basement of our pop-up with graffiti and like brick and mortar crumbling everywhere? So it's like, it's a different type of place in general.
Absolutely. What you described is very on point, and it was an experience where like almost like eating something where it tastes so good, like you almost can't get enough of it. And like you said at the very end, you're like, oh my God, I just want to go back there. Like I should just start at the beginning and do it all over. And when the first time I went there, I went into that first room off to the side after you get to the elevator. Mm-hmm. I literally walked in and out of that room probably 3 or 4 times. Like, is this where I'm supposed to wait? Am I doing that? Well, I don't understand. Wait. It really has that way of kind of distorting your perception just a little bit. But at the same time, like you described, it feels familiar. I felt very at home there. And then obviously meeting you too, and being able to interact, which is something that you don't always get to do when you go to a place that houses a bunch of art. You don't always get to talk directly with the director. And so that made my experience really phenomenal too. So I got to thank you for taking the time. And I know it wasn't just me, because I was hearing you talk with other people that had come in after me. And you really took time to kind of explain, Devon's work and what they were seeing or about to see. And then I had that experience too, as I was walking. I would walk like through, experience like 2 or 3 rooms. And then all of a sudden it would kind of hit me like, I need to go back a couple rooms and kind of like look at this again. So it really is like a phenomenal experience, and it's something that, us talking about it doesn't do it any justice. You just have to go there and experience it firsthand.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a firsthand type of place. And I love what you mentioned, about like the accessibility that you had like towards me directly and like being able to speak with me. I think it's important to mention that the office is part of the exhibition. It's like right in the middle of like all those rooms that are, looping around. And so people, have to walk through there to, see the whole exhibition. And And I love that. Like you described, when you go to a lot of galleries or museums, all that's very hidden, tucked away. But we're just like right out there in front of you. I'm typing my emails and, sorting my databases and everything right there. And even if it's just like a quick hi, hello, how are you? Thanks for coming type thing. We'll just breeze by and, leave after that. Or, like with you, it's like where we talked for like almost an hour, when you're just cruising by. I think making that connection with your visitor, with your audiences is so important in so many ways and makes opportunities for everybody. Like if my office wasn't there, I probably wouldn't have talked to you and wouldn't be having this cool podcast experience right now. And, just yesterday, someone was passing through and again, he had never been there before. He's like, so this place is really cool. I'd actually really like to photograph he's a fashion designer. He's like, I'd like to photograph my next collection here that's coming out soon. Can I do that? Just like all these really cool things happen when you're just there in front of people, saying hi to them. And so I think and when you describe too, like Devon herself being so personable and generous, like it transcribes, I think, to that space and how it functions that way too. And, the people who have always worked there are always very generous with their time and, want to, genuinely like connect with the people who take the time to visit, this really sort of hidden gem type place. I think you have to be a special person to find the Dikeou Collection or to be introduced to it and, to take the time to come there because, it's kind of secret in a lot of ways still.
It lends itself to that magic. Yeah,
absolutely. That's it.
And literally, if you walked by the building outside, you would have no idea. It's, I don't know. I can't say enough about it. And the offices where you work out of are actually part of the exhibition.
Yes.
Like there's stuff in there. And if you start looking around, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That's, there's an interactive piece in there called Takes a Licking, Keeps on Ticking. And, when you mentioned how you spent like 3 hours almost at the collection, well, that piece is a time clock where the visitors are supposed to like take one of those old school punch cards, write their name in it and like clock in to the gallery. Ideally, they would come back and clock out so we can keep track of actually how long people were there. But just like those little things. So even when I'm talking to people, when they come in the collection, I'm like, oh, you better clock in. They're like, wait, what? Why? And then they just do it. And it's like, all right, so now you're part of this art piece and your name's on the wall and, we archive everything. We don't throw anything away. So it's like, you're part of the show, you're part of the work, you're activating it. Your interaction is like crucial to its purpose.
Yeah. What I love about that, the way and obviously I haven't been there yet. Definitely plan on going there. But what I love about it's not just seeing a collection, it's actually having an experience.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, again, we're speaking about like Devon Dikeou's work in mid-career smear, but the Dikeou Collection itself, with the, the 40 some artists that we represent, their work is very interactive too. So even prior to mid-career smear, the work is like, it's there for people to experience in a way that's not just like looking with your eyes, circling around and kind of meandering and in a passive way. It's very engaging.
How does she choose what pieces she's going to collect or to add to the collection?
So, it circles back again to the Zing Magazine connection and, work that is, again, like kind of difficult to collect because, it could be really large scale or a difficult material. Like one of my favorite pieces in the collection is by an artist named Johannes van der Beek, and it's called Newspaper Ruined. And it's one New York Sunday Times, newspaper that he cut up and created like a huge room-sized city out of. And it's from 2001. And, it's newspaper. It gets old and, it's sitting out there. And so it's like a piece that you really have to tend to and like keep it, like babysit, to a certain extent. But it's just like so incredible. And, it's an audience favorite. Another one of our really popular pieces is by an artist named Momio Torimitsu and a piece called Somehow I Don't Feel Comfortable, which are these two 16-foot tall inflatable pink rabbits that are typically in that like big main room when you first walk in. And it's like, where is anyone else going to put this? These giant bunnies and the styrofoam sculpture and, stuff like that. So, but she really goes for work that's, I would say, more conceptual in nature. It's always, the thought behind it, the idea, the impetus of the work itself that almost transcends the object, but it's always like a really cool object in and of itself too. Yeah. Artists that are, again, like kind of younger, early in their careers, taking risks, experimental. There's certain galleries that, I think that they, favor in some ways and really like and want to support their programs. It really comes down to personal connections. These are all people, artists, galleries that, there's real relationships with. A lot of art collections are driven, all have different motivations behind them. Some people want like, one, like, I just want all the Warhols, and they'll just go for that. Or, I'm really in this to kind of like flip it and make money. And there's that side of it too. A lot of the work too is coming straight from the artist studios or, from their gallery exhibitions. Nothing is really secondary market. No auction pieces or anything like that. So new work straight from the studio is a big part of it.
I love the whole thing. It revolves around connection. And I think that's what makes it feel so special, both, obviously in what Devon collects, but also her own personal work. It's easy to get drawn into that work, I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. Her pieces are absolutely about people in a lot of ways. And it's about the art world. One of my favorite installations in the exhibition is called "We'd Like to Get to Know You," which is a piece that a lot of her work is ongoing. I'll just say that too right off the bat, because it's that participation element always keeps it fresh and new and like something that's like new occurring to it. But "We'd Like to Get to Know You" is essentially 2 glass vases that sits like right at the entrance of the gallery. One of them's empty and you're just supposed to drop your business card in it. And the other one just has some after dinner mints inside. And whenever she would show that piece over the course of 20 some years, she's just collecting those business cards. And now the installation is a room floor to ceiling of those business cards pinned to the walls, like thousands and thousands of them. And that's the first time we've ever actually shown that piece in that way. It's always, again, just been the 2 glass vases, but now it's like, this is what 30 years of showing the glass vases amounts to. And that's what the retrospective is really driving home. And people come in and see that room and spend hours. Like you could spend hours just looking at the business cards. That's one of my favorite pieces. It's so cool. Just tracking the design that was popular at that time and stuff like that. But people are like, hey, isn't that your uncle's business there? Or don't you know that guy? People are making these connections from stuff they would never expect. And another really popular piece that took everybody by surprise that's become a fan favorite is called "Do I Know You?", which is her collection of Rolodexes over the course of 30 years of just her personal database that she's, again, been maintaining for 30 years. And that's one that's, again, right by my office, which I love because I can hear what people are saying. You hear teenagers walk in and they're like, "Rolodexes, cool." Who says that, But when you see it taken all together in that way, it is awesome. And they're just presented in a really beautiful way. And you can go through and look through each one and find people. And here's a cool story. Right before we closed for COVID, there's a professor named Ann Thulson from MSU who is one of our biggest supporters, hands down. She's always bringing her students through for tours. She also does a summer program for little kids and is always bringing the children for their camps. But she brought a group of other art educators with her on this tour. There's 5 of them. And Devon was the one leading the tour. We get to the Rolodex room and one woman in particular it's "Oh, we can look through these, right? This is interactive, right?" We're "Yeah, go ahead." So she beelines straight for a really specific one. Who even knows? It's what is she getting at? And then she finds someone's name and she's "Can I take a picture?" I'm "Yeah, take a picture." And then she goes, "Can I take one with you, Devon?" And really fixated. And then she's "I have to tell you something. I'm Yoko Ono's daughter, and this is my mom's address, and she's in the Rolodex." And it's just who in a million years? All of us were just in shock at the end. And she's "I'm going to call my mom later and I'm going to tell her that I saw her in this art piece in Denver and I'm going to tell her all about you and the show." And so just, yeah, those connections that you would just never expect. And I don't know if I told you, Todd, about the wallpaper story.
Tell our listeners about the wallpaper story.
Okay, so this is another cool one where going back a few years ago, I was looking for something in one of our many like storage facilities for Devon, and I came across these like ripped up scraps of wallpaper that were just like this amazing Technicolor 1960s psychedelic trippy floral weird pattern. I was just like, this is to die for. What is this? So I showed it to Devon and she was like, oh, wow, this was the wallpaper that was in my mother's powder room, like growing up, you know, that got removed eventually for like remodeling or whatnot. And she's like, I've been looking for these scraps everywhere. Wow, I can't believe you found this. And then eventually we decided to be like, we need to recreate this wallpaper. So we pieced it together, sent it to a designer to like make the full, like, you know, span of what the pattern would be, and had it produced in Brooklyn. And now it's installed at the collection. And, you know, after the opening, there's like all these pictures on social media, you know, of people like sharing their experience at the show. And the wallpaper like is a pretty heavily circulated image, you know, people loved it. And we got an email from a woman in New York who we've never met before. And she was just like, hey, so I saw this picture online of this wallpaper. I grew up with the exact same one, like when I was a kid. Isn't that crazy? And she sent us this picture of like her and her brother when they were little kids, like in the 70s, like with the exact same wallpaper. And I'm like, wow, like who would have thought? Like, this is crazy. So we start to like, you know, just exchange like nice messages to each other. And she sends another photo again of herself and her brother as kids in front of another patterned wallpaper. And Devon's like, get out of town. I had that one too. So it's like they both had like these two matching wallpapers, these people who had never met. You can't make this stuff up, you know, it just happens when, again, like you make these connections with people and you're generous and you share and yeah, just like be a genuine person.
So one of the epiphanies I had as I was walking through this current exhibition of Devon's is I made this realization, and, you know, I kind of had thought about it a little bit in the course of doing this podcast, because this has been very educational for both Wes and I, because we're not art history majors or art historians. You know, we don't know, you know, we know a hell of a lot more than we did almost 2 years ago when we started this journey, which is always just, you know, that in itself is worth the price of admission of doing this podcast. But as I was walking through the different rooms, I had this epiphany that I realized that art doesn't always have to be like this precious thing, and it can be interactive and it can be messy, and it's anything you want it to be. And I think that's the realization I made in seeing Devon's work, which I was just like, I was over the moon about, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you said that word precious, that's a word that Devon uses quite a bit. And, you know, she's like, it's okay. Like my work is not that precious, meaning like it is just like a piece of paper or something like that, but it's still something incredibly special. And, you know, we worked hard to make, but yeah, I think that lends itself to just the story and the history of the work. And the title itself, Mid-Career Smear, is also reflective of, you know, going back to like the space and how things are like, you know, definitely feeling lived in. When we deinstalled the Dikeou Collection artwork, we purposely left all of the old like drill holes, scuffs, you know, kind of dirty banisters, you know, like this painting used to be here, and you can like see the outline of like the paint faded around that. And it's like every other gallery, museum, institution in the world is like, we're painting, like we're covering that up. It's going to be fresh and nice. And she was like, absolutely not, like leave it there. You know, those are the ghosts of the collection. That's what she calls it. And so the layers of like how her art practice and collecting and publishing and curating all overlap is like the core too of like what her art is about. And so you're not walking into like the slick, you know, white cube. You know, that's like the term that people use. It wants to be that, but it's like, we're not, you know. Yeah, you're going to see the leftovers, and we're proud of it. The scars are there and they're beautiful.
So when I walk into somebody's personal space, their house or what have you, I'm always curious to see like what kind of objects they have placed around their house. And, you know, it kind of gives you insight to what kind of people they are. Do they like to collect things? What kind of books do they read? I kind of feel like that when I'm walking through, this exhibition, that you really kind of get a sense of it's a personal connection that you have with the artist. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of like intimacy there, but in, a very like casual way too. It's approachable, but you feel like you're really like getting to know somebody. And another piece that we have is called Call Me, and you can like leave voicemails for Devon on our answering machine. And a lot of people are just saying like, thanks for sharing your memories with me. Thanks for sharing, your life with us. People are understanding that, it's a different type of work, and people are like coming to me and like speaking about the exhibition in such inspired ways that like I never would have expected. Every day is like, I'm really blown away by the audience response more than anything.
It's got to be pretty fun to have a front row seat to all that.
It is. Yeah. I feel really lucky. So many museums, spend countless hours and dollars on just like studying their demographics and like taking surveys of their audiences, which are all really important. Like you need that data, and it's a good way to reach people. But just to like sit there and talk to them, as they are experiencing the art in real time, like that's priceless. That's the kind of feedback that any kind of like market research person or something like that would dream of.
How long did it take you to deinstall the collection and then get the exhibit to where it was ready to open?
We did it in like 11 months.
That had to have been a lot of work.
It was a lot of work, and I owe so much to my staff at that time. Everybody worked their butts off really hard, everything from like creating the checklists and building the audio tour to helping, again, like fabricate the work, install it. Some of those pieces are massive and very time consuming to put together. Takes a lot of, just dedication and focus to pull that stuff off. And, on the ground at that time, there was 4 of us doing it. And there were some days where I was just like, oh my God, like we got 2 weeks to go, and like the drywall guy is still late, and, where's this person? But it all comes together. And we had also just, assembled this great crew of fabricators and specialty installers too. Like when I talked about the wallpaper, finding a wallpaper installer is not easy. That's a really like niche thing. The security gates in the big room, that was a really big undertaking. A lot of these pieces, were a year in the making in and of themselves. A lot of this work was stuff that Devon had on hand. It was in storage. It was transported back and forth from New York. I think there was maybe a total of like 4 or 5 trips just in the Troya transportation that I'll say, of like her husband driving it in their pickup back and forth, taking the art across the country. And then work that was older from early in her career that she just didn't have anymore. For whatever reason that she remade. There's a piece at the pop-up you may recall called the MTV Altarpiece, which is that large 3-part sculpture dedicated to music television that she made when she was a college student in the 80s. And it's made out of like, you want to talk about the ultimate mixed media work, like that's it to the T. And that was actually when she was creating that, one of the first times I've seen Devon like make art in like the fundamental sense, like painting and drawing something and really like crafting something in her home. That's the first time I'd seen her work like that. And that was like a really cool experience too. It was a lot of work. She put a lot of work into that piece. And then she made another one in like 2 weeks. I couldn't believe it because a curator friend of hers from Los Angeles came to see it. And she's like, I love this MTV. I want to show it in my gallery. And it was like, we could drive this there, or let's make another one. And we made another one. And like hats off to Devon because she worked her butt off on 2 of those sculptures. So, like a year in the making. And, but no, longer than that, because that was just to install. We started working with Courtney, the curator, probably like 6 years ago, talking about this project. Just all the pre-planning that goes into it. Like, where are we going to host this? Oh, we should probably do the Dikeou Collection. Just those curatorial conversations that take a long time to build upon.
How did Devon go about choosing Courtney to curate the show?
Courtney, I believe, approached Devon initially saying, I'd really want to put together a retrospective of your work. Courtney had shown Devon's work a couple times, first at the Biennial of the Americas in 2013, and she showed her another piece of hers again, for an exhibition called Game Changer at the Boulder Museum of Contemporary Art. And, ever since then, like, Courtney's just always been like in our circle and a really good friend, personally, and of the collection, and a big supporter, of her Black Cube projects. And so, she approached Devon about saying, I want to do this. And it just went from there.
So you said that in the collection, there's 40 artists currently. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's close to 40 now. That's like my guesstimation number, but yeah.
And quite a range of work. Yes,
really diverse range of work. Everything. I'd say the earliest work that we have is from 1993. Otherwise, like, it spans from then and everything up till, like, we're actively acquiring work now. So 2021, and everything from photography, printmaking. I described like the bunnies and the inflatable pieces and the newspapers, like a whole range of media work that I would say is like media wise, like sort of non-traditional in a lot of ways. Try to go beyond like your, typical painting, drawing, it's a lot more involved than that. So, but yeah, it's 40 artists, international, whole span of genres and media, and yeah, very diverse.
And mostly artists that she's met in New York or here in Denver as well?
It's a heavily New York focus, I would say. That's where like a lot of the work is coming from. The artists themselves are from all over the world, but they may be currently based in New York or have a gallery there. So that's like sort of the hub of where it's coming from.
Gotcha. And so when the mid-career smear comes to a conclusion, mm-hmm. How long will it take you to put this collection back in place? And because you're adding to it all the time, will it still be able to be housed on that 5th floor, or are there plans to expand?
So as of now, it'll still be on the 5th floor. There is more work coming in, but it'll again either be there or at our pop-up space. I don't think we're at the point yet where it's like, okay, we need another building or something like that. But I think it'll take, again, at least another year to, deinstall Devon's work and then put back the Dikeou Collection. Some of the work, though, that's now in mid-career smear will stay through the Dikeou Collection times. The wallpaper, for example, that's a pretty permanent thing. The business cards that I described, typically in that room, there's another piece, again, by Momio Torimitsu, the artist who I described, who did the bunnies. We have another work by her called Miyata Hiro, which is a robot of a Japanese businessman crawling on the floor. And then there's video works to go with it from when she activated that piece as a performance in 6 major tourist and business districts around the world, where she actually has the robot crawl throughout the city. And she's dressed as a nurse and like tends to him as he's making his way on the street. And so when we put the collection back, the business cards will stay because it's like a business connection. It makes sense there. Some of Devon's work was already part of Dikeou Collection before we changed over to her solo work. At the 2 pieces being reserved for Leo Castelli and reserved for Ileana Sonnabend, which is the room with the brass plaques that are blown up to mural size. And then there's a table and like cafe table and chairs in there. And then another piece called Not Quite Mrs. Demonill's Liquor Closet, which was already previously part of the Dikeou Collection. And so it'll be different. It'll be different than last time. Like sort of curatorial like layout of the Dikeou Collection, I really like because it's installed just as they acquire new work. So like when you first walk through the doors, the very first pieces that they first started collecting are what you're introduced to first. And then just like as you make your way through the space, that's when it's like the newer acquisitions. So I think it'll still kind of follow that pattern too.
And how do you decide which, obviously some of the stuff that was already there will remain there, but how do you decide with like these new acquisitions, what gets to be at the main building and what goes to say the pop-up?
Well, I don't know. I think Devon, she has all that cooked up in her head in some way. I think a lot of the newer work will end up at the pop-up though. That's such a cool space. And I think that's one that we want to build upon some more. But the main space too, there is still room for newer work. The acquisitions that we have like range from photography to more sculptural type installations. So I have a feeling that the more sculptural work will probably go to the pop-up, but you never know. Like she has this stuff in her head and then she just kind of tells me like, all right, I have this decision and it's going here. But we talk about those types of stuff too. Like even with, curating this exhibition, it was like a lot of conversations between everybody. So she likes input, across the board of how it all comes together.
Those have to be really fun discussions.
It is. Yeah. It's like a lot of brainstorming, it's fun. I like those types of conversations a lot.
Anything that you've seen that they've acquired that you're really excited about? Or that you can talk about? I don't know. Maybe we can't talk about it.
No, honestly, like I'm not really like tied down to like not talk about certain things, but I like to keep elements of surprise. So I'll probably just keep it like that.
Sounds good. And then you talked about early in the podcast that you also are a collector. So what kind of things do you collect?
Currently, not anything super focused, I'll be honest. My collecting habits and energies are very much focused, like directed towards my job at the moment. I do like to collect magazines. I like to collect art books that I find interesting. I still collect like CDs and music, even though like I have literally nothing to play it on, I feel like anymore. I collect, I don't know, just like nothing. I can't say I have anything in particular at the moment, but back in the day, like I was really into collecting Rolling Stone magazine was a big thing for me. And that's something that I carried around for a long time. I've moved around a lot in my life. And so I've kind of had to learn to let go of a lot of collections, which is unfortunate. But collecting is something that like has always been present in my life in a lot of ways. And being surrounded by other people's collections, seeing them, learning about them is something that I find like incredibly interesting. And I find that collectors are also very creative people generally, like they are like typically an artist too, or a musician or something. And I think that that's a really interesting connection. The artist that I wrote my master's thesis paper on when I was getting my master's, his name is Harry Smith. And he was a really prolific multidisciplinary artist who again was like super driven by his collections. And that was something that like I was really drawn to as well. So yeah, there's something about like that mentality that collectors have. And if you have it too, you just kind of like get it. And so when I mentioned earlier, like that family member who's like, you need to work for a private collector, I was like, that makes perfect sense. But like, that's like a whole other like realm, to dig into, but it happened. I think these people, like we're all connected in some way. Like it's like this brain thing. I don't know. Collectors like have a different mindset that we kind of magnet each other.
You find your people, right?
Yeah, you definitely do. You do.
It's exciting to talk to you. I mean, what a unique position to be in. And I think it's cool that you collect CDs. You don't have a CD player?
No, I don't. Like my last remaining CD player was in my car. I got a new car last year. It doesn't have a CD player. So lost out, but I still like to buy them. Like they're just really cool objects. There is actually a particular line of CDs that I like to get called the Fabric Live series. And Fabric is a club in London, and they invite like, pretty prominent DJs to, make a compilation or a mix for them. And it comes out like produced in this really beautiful packaging, like the kind of like tin, like clamshell opening with like incredible artwork that's always really surprising. And there's 100 of them. So I have like maybe 15, like not that many. They're kind of hard to come by. I don't try to shop for them online or something. It's usually like, I really want to find it in a store. So that's like one of my more focused collecting I've been going for. And then going back to the magazine thing, I am actually wanting to rebuild my Rolling Stone collection. I've gotten like a few like key pieces that like I really liked when I had them back in the day, and a few other electronic music publications, specifically magazines called Knowledge and ATM, and they always came with a CD. And so I'd like try to get those with the album if I could.
That's so cool. And I believe you're pretty young. You look young to me. Not a lot of the younger generation are into collecting. And I just had this discussion with somebody actually last weekend, I guess it was. And that people in this modern age, they don't want to have, like, I have a huge CD collection. Wes can attest to that.
Yeah.
I love the CD format. I have vinyl too. And I still have cassette tapes.
Yeah.
And I have the ability to play all those mediums, but a lot of people just are, they're not into having things, they want it all on their phone. They can stream it, but I like having that physical thing that I can actually hold in my hand. And I love going to the thrift store and looking through 500 different CDs to see, find something that I don't have in my collection or that I've never seen before. There's an excitement to that.
Yes, absolutely. And, you're getting into that like kind of collector mentality that I talked about before. And when you say young people in particular, I hate to say it, but, they're coming up in a culture of instant gratification, and collecting is not like that at all. It's a slow process. It's something that you really you have to be in it for the long haul to really feel like you're successful at it, or like that you're like really creating something special with it. And these days, like for collectors, I mean, it's a win-win for like really good collectors who, find something on eBay and it's like, hell yeah, I'm going to get that. And it's there. But that feeling though, when you come across something like out and about that you weren't expecting, like that's a feeling that just can't be duplicated in any other way. But yeah, like the whole like collecting thing and my interests like started, at a young age. And I think that that's how a lot of collectors are, is like it starts when you're a kid and you just find something that you're like super into, and you have like that kid type freedom to like spend your time obsessing over it. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to be like kids these days, but it does sort of like reflect on that. And again, I think that instant gratification, especially if you're talking about collecting music, it's just something where you make 2 clicks and you're hearing the brand new song of somebody. And instead it's like, you have to go in your car and go get it. And like, maybe the store doesn't have it. And so there's like that work involved, that doesn't really exist quite as much anymore. And, it has its benefits too. Like you're exposed to so much diverse, anything really, because it's right there on the internet. But like that discovery factor, that's like, I think what's waning, and that's what is meant to like hold a collector's attention. And I feel like the discovery is waning, and that feeling, a lot of people don't feel it that way anymore.
I get a feeling that the digital thing is really a temporary state. It doesn't feel permanent to me. Mm-hmm. Where like, let's say photography or whatever, when you're holding a photograph from, let's say the, turn of the century, 1900, that has something totally different than you're seeing something. And I use iPhone all the time, and I have an Instagram account, not that I post a lot, but I view a lot, but it's not permanent. It's not something tangible, I think. And I think that's this generation that's growing up in the digital world. I think there's a sense of nothing's permanent. It's fleeting in a way. And that's a boomer's view, I guess. So.
No, you're very right. It's spending time with that object, and a CD versus something on your phone. Like, your phone runs out of space, you're just going to delete that album and be like, oh, well, I had my time with it. It's gone. One thing I think about too, with kids is how are they decorating their rooms? My room was plastered with all the magazine stuff that I collected, all the photos of my friends and everything like that, and artwork and just crazy stuff. But now it's all on their phone. They're not buying magazines. They're not maybe a couple posters here and there. I think now they're really into cool lighting, like LEDs and mood lighting or something like that to kind of fill their space, decorate their space. But even that's a more fleeting thing. You're oh, turn it off. It's done now. Whereas in your room or with stuff on the walls, it's there, and once it's there, you don't want to take it down. So there's, I think the materiality, is disappearing. I think we're designers essentially want to design themselves into oblivion, where it's nothing's going to exist anymore, and we're just going to be hovering in space, doing who knows what. So, we need our stuff. That's what material culture is. And, as an art historian, these objects are so valuable, and you don't realize it when it's just sitting there in front of you, but it's going to mean a lot, later down the line.
I just like being an art historian, going to see Monet. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now you have these artists that are making NFTs. Where are they going to be in 100 years?
I can't even wrap my head around the NFT thing, to be honest. I try and it's just it's not sticking with me. Props to people who do it. I'm always supportive of artists experimenting and trying new things. And again, it's work. If people want to buy it and you have the capability to make it, just be why not? I'm going to make an NFT. You should. But yeah, it's where does that go? What is it?
Right.
I don't know. What's an NFT?
Right. And I heard that there's there's a gallery that's opening that's going to be viewing NFTs. So big TV screens with NFTs, rotating or permanently on display or something like that. But yeah, it lives in, zeros and ones in a computer, some server somewhere. It's not like you can go down in the basement and crank open a
come
big
here, kids, when you're grandpa, be come look at my NFT collection. What is, it's not going to be anything. I don't know.
I don't know either. But maybe that's because, like I said, I'm old and I just can't wrap my head around it. But it's going to evolve.
People are having great success with it. They're having a lot of fun with it. It's getting people talking and interested in art in a different way. So have a ball.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I think everybody should be making NFTs. I should probably make a couple. Yeah.
This podcast can be one, maybe.
There we go.
We've discussed that a little bit in very loose terms.
Right.
Maybe it's for when we actually have the chip implant in our head, right? And we have access to all this stuff. So you'll have access to a particular experience that only you can have, right? Inside your head.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. When designers, now it's kind of you want to condense everything so much that it's literally going to be Disneyland is now in your brain or something like that. And you're having some mental experience of it. I don't know. The future's weird.
The future is weird. And I always have this, as I sit there pondering, as I fall asleep at night or whatever, is this a natural part of our evolution, merging with technology and computers? Part of me wants to fight that because that's not necessarily who I am or what I want to be. But at the same time, is that just the trajectory we're on and part of our evolution, and there's really no getting around it. This is a natural thing. It doesn't seem natural, but maybe it is natural.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point where it's you're with us or you're getting left behind when it comes to the tech stuff. And like, I kind of understand like that's sort of the direction it's going, but it's really not as accessible and as helpful and as useful as people I think really think it is. Just yesterday, I helped this like older gentleman who flagged me down to help him pay for his parking because there was nowhere to just run your card through or like drop $1 in the box or something like that. It was like, you have to download the app and you have to scan this code and you have to enter all this stuff. And I'm just like, who wants to do this? You know, like why is this like any better or easier just because it's on your phone? It's so weird, but you know, it's all about balance. I think you have to adapt. You have to like, you know how to do like things as they change. Like, how do you pay your bills online now instead of sending a check in the mail? It's like, well, you just do it. But you know, you got to keep yourself grounded. And, you know, I think like sticking to like hobbies and things like that like, you know, kept you again, like grounded in earlier times, you know, helps a lot in that way too. So, yeah, keep it real.
That's right. That's right.
New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenet podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening.
I'm Suomi, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
Growing up, were you exposed, and I kind of get a sense of this, but maybe I'm off here. Did you hang out with a lot of older people growing up?
I did, actually. I'd say like kind of more so than other kids. I'm an only child, so I was with like my parents a lot, and, you know, just whoever they had, you know, younger days. Like I grew up in San Francisco. They were very social. So a lot of times I was like the only kid around and didn't really think about it though. Like sometimes I'd feel like, oh God, I'm with the grownups again, but like they were all like really cool people. And so I didn't ever feel like disenfranchised in any sort of way. And, you know, in school and stuff like that, like, you know, I have a lot of friends and quite a few of them like lived in my neighborhood and stuff like that. So, you know, I was always around like other people my age. But yeah, I was around adults quite a bit. And a lot of my mom, she was a graphic designer and an artist. And so, you know, I would go to work with her a lot at the publishing house or at the magazine, and just a lot of times like her sitting in front of the computer, but there's always like cool stuff around. I'm like, ooh, I can play with the highlighters. And like, I liked going to work with her. Like that was fun for me. And again, like cool people that were just around, a lot of like artists and stuff. And, I have a pretty big like extended family though, a lot of cousins who are my age and we're together a lot. So yeah, like good network of people, I'd say, like growing up.
It's cool to hear that. And I'm glad I had that kind of sense about you because you seem grounded and very well-rounded. But when I'm talking with you, I just got that sense that, you know, as a child, you had the opportunity to interact with adults and it's cool because I have a feeling that, you know, you weren't necessarily, when you were in those situations, you weren't treated like you were a child. You were interacting on their same level. Like they treated you, you know, as an adult. You got to know how to have those conversations about real stuff, right? Like important things or interesting things, you know, having intellectual conversations.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like I was definitely very present, you know, with things that were like going on and, you know, conversations at the dinner table and things like that. So, but I do feel like I got like a very full kid experience too. And, but yeah, that's a really like just interesting thing to like pick up, about me and like really cool. But yeah, I do owe a lot, I think, of who I am now to my childhood experiences. And again, like growing up in San Francisco was just, you couldn't think of a cooler place to be a kid, you know, just fun, creative, very out there and open type place, exposed to a lot of culture and exposed to a lot of weird people that, you know, I just kind of like adapted with. And, you know, amazing memories, of my childhood growing up there.
Back to the Dikeou Collection and you being the director, are you currently seeking interns or taking on interns at this time for people that might be listening and are interested in having such a amazing experience?
Yes, absolutely. Like our internship program is pretty much always open. And it's something that I would absolutely say, like, we're open now. Could definitely use, some people here. And I love having interns. I learn a lot from them too. And having, younger people who are just starting out, in their careers or, whatever, and figuring things out. Like, I really love being there and present at that point in people's lives. So yes, on our website, again, on DikeouCollection.org, there is a link on our menu that gives information about the internship. You basically just apply with your CV and a cover letter of why you're interested. And we try to cater it to, what your interests are. If someone's really interested in, in writing, then we'll give them lots of writing opportunities, for our blog or to do our artist interviews. If they're interested in doing event programming, that's absolutely something that we can facilitate. Archives, collection management. There's a lot to dig into with the collection, but really you're involved in all of it. You get to do a little bit of everything. But if you have a specific focus, I'd really try to build something for you that caters to that. That's
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a incredible experience that would be. Do you currently have interns working with you?
No, nobody now.
Well, there you go, folks. If you are looking for an opportunity, I'd say you couldn't go wrong, and this would be an incredible experience. So if you're interested, reach out.
Yeah, please do.
Any advice that you would give to anyone that's seeking to get into the kind of work, either in a museum or with a private collection? Any advice that you'd give to young folks that are coming up that want to get into this kind of work?
Get familiar, really, I'd say know yourself and what your own personal interests are more than anything. If you're going to be getting into this field, it's a lot of personal investment, and you want to be doing something that you really like. So just having a strong sense of what direction you want to go in, but maybe also having a sense of openness to it and being like, oh, I didn't know about this certain field or this side of the job. Maybe I want to explore this a bit more. Putting yourself out there, which is honestly probably the hardest part of the job. Just going out to the galleries, going out to meet artists, just knowing the people who are out there working already. The opportunities are there. They're absolutely there. And you literally just have to show up and make yourself known that, this is something that you want to do, and people will make space for you. It'll happen.
Networking is important.
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to talk about as far as events that might be coming up, or anything else about the collection that you want to talk about, Hayley?
Sure. Yeah. I'll mention, at the pop-up space that you talked about visiting, we will be doing a reception, some light open hours there on September 22nd, which is the fall equinox. And we plan to be doing those consistent types of, again, sort of mini reception openings on the seasonal equinoxes and solstices, because Devon has work that is relevant to those dates. And so we'll be having an event at the pop-up on September 22nd, which I think is a Wednesday. I'll get the time figured out soon. And aside from the Dikeou Collection, I am currently serving as an associate curator with a project called the Institute for Sociometry, and they are doing their every 4-year IS fair, which is a very kind of DIY type of art/science fair presentation that they've been doing since 1996. And as far as I know right now, that'll be at the Globeville Rec Center, November 10th through the 14th. And I should have more information about that forthcoming. We're in the early stages of planning, but that's kind of like a side project that I have going on right now.
Fantastic. Yeah, let us know about that, and we'll definitely make sure we push it out on our social media, and of course we'll put out all the pertinent information in the episode notes this week. Wes, you got any more questions?
No, not really. This has been a lot of fun, though. I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to coming down to the Dikeou Collection and checking you out and the collection and having a good time, because it sounds like a blast.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. Let us know when you want to come and we can give you a tour.
Yeah, thanks.
Hayley, thank you so very much for spending time with us this afternoon. I know you're very busy, and we always appreciate that people are willing to take a couple hours out of their day to speak with us. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, thank you guys for the opportunity. I've had a lot of fun talking with you as well. And this has been great. I've had a lot of fun.
Again, to our listeners, the Dikeou Collection is at 1615 California Street on the 5th floor here in Denver, Colorado. And then the pop-up is down on 312 East Colfax Avenue. You can find all that information on the website, dikeoucollection.org. All that information, again, will be in our episode notes for the week. And for the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.